Boston, Crockett's Victory Garden.
Welcome to Crockett's Victory Garden. I'm Jim Crockett. If there ever was a true proverb, it's that one which says, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, particularly when applied to rose bushes. Because on roses, by the time you see the trouble, it may be too late to control it. What I'm doing here is spraying my rose bushes, and this is going to be on a weekly basis from the time the buds swell, to control both insects and diseases. Now, the chief insect that I'm trying to control right now is aphids. Now, these aphids, as you usually see, get right up here by the bud, and they suck the nourishment out of the stem. You get malformed blossoms, and you might even get a spreading of virus. The disease I want to control now is that dreaded black spot. Now, the black spot is just what it says. Black spots on the leaves turn yellow, fall on the ground, then it rains, and the spores have splashed back up on the stem to reinfect the plant again and again. What I'm using is a combination of 4 different insecticides, or fungicides and insecticides, and this is a proprietary mixture. There is 7. 7 will kill Japanese beetles, and you know how they like roses. Malathion controls these aphids. Kelthane is for the red spider mites that suck the nourishment out. And then Folpet, F-O-L-P-E-T, is a specific fungicide for the control of black spot. I put a little bit, about 1/4 teaspoonful of detergent into a gallon of water so it sticks and spreads here on the foliage and gets good control. Well, today I'm going to plant a peach tree. I'm going to plant a shade tree. I'm going to show you how to make a hedge, which is dog, rabbit, and child-proof. And then I hope we have time to go in to answer a few questions in the greenhouse. Well, I want to go up and plant this peach tree, but on the way by, there's one little plant I'd like to show you right here. These are the strawberries, which I put in about a month ago. The plants have not begun runners yet, but they are sending out blossoms. Well, I don't want them to spend their energy putting out blossoms, so these buds must come off. This plant is going to send out runners. We'll have a whole series of new plants around here next summer, and that's when we'll get blossoms and fruit. But let's go up here and we'll plant a peach tree. I guess the most important thing that I should tell you about any fruit tree that I would recommend for the home property is this. Buy a dwarf peach or a dwarf apple. Don't get the standard size trees. A standard size apple tree will go 25 feet tall or more, spread 30 feet across. It takes years for it to come into bearing, where these younger trees will start to bear within a matter of 2 or 3 years. The fruit, by the way, is full size, just as delicious, except that you can reach almost all of the fruit just standing on the ground, which takes the hazard out of picking, makes it easier to spray because everything is within reach. Now, in planting a tree of this nature, to get it really started, I've mixed with the soil about 1/3 peat moss. And this is what we're talking about, just ordinary peat moss that you can get at any garden center. Mix about 1/3 peat with the soil and a slow-release fertilizer. Mix that in well, and then we have to get this in around the ball just as carefully. Now, you notice that the hole itself is at least 1 foot wider than the ball of soil that's on the tree. Now, I like to use my feet in this, get right in and firm it. No root will take hold if the ground is too loose around it. Well, now we'll eventually fill this hole in completely. And I'll make a little saucer around it to hold water, because these have to have a drink. But while I'm talking about this peach tree, which happens to be dwarf Alberta peach, reminds me of a letter we came just yesterday from a viewer who said, I planted 2 peach trees this spring. One of them has leaves on it, pretty good crop of leaves, and the other one doesn't have any leaves. What am I doing wrong? Well, I think what you have done wrong is this. You probably haven't cut your tree back. If I were to allow this peach tree to grow just as it is, this is what would happen. Right up here, these stems are already dead. When this tree was dug from the nursery, 3/4 of its root system remained in the soil. So we have an abbreviated root system and a big top. Now you might say to me, well, but I bought a 4 to 5 foot peach tree and that's what I want, and I don't want to cut it back. Well, for this person who wrote in, let me say, the one without leaves, I'm sure will die if you don't cut it back. The one with leaves is very apt to die come August in good hot weather if you don't cut it back. But this is what you should do for them. When I say cut back, I mean very, very severely, way down to here, so that these stems are not over 3 or 4 inches long. Now let me just say that a commercial orchardist would do this, and those fellows aren't in business for the fun of it. They know that this will make the tree survive. There will be, within a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, new growth will spring from these latent buds. By September, we'll have a 4 to 5 foot tree, maybe a few fruit next year, and surely a lot of fruit the year thereafter. This is true for all stone fruits. Cut them back. This is plums, cherries, nectarines, apricots, things of that nature that have a stone, they're called a stone fruit. And that's the way to handle them. Seems very cruel, but this is the way that works. Now I want to go over to talk to you about a hedge which is proof of, dog proof I should say, or rabbit proof. Begin by talking about the plant itself. I have here perhaps the most commonplace of all hedge plants, a type of privet. In this instance, because this is in the northern part of the country, we have an Amur privet. That's A-M-U-R. Very, very hardy. Comes from Manchuria. Other parts of the country, you might have a California privet, which, by the way, comes from Japan. But it keeps its leaves all through the year. Even in the north, the privet is the first to send out leaves in the spring, the last to lose them in the fall. Therefore, it makes a good hedge plant. It will grow anywhere, and it has practically no insects or diseases, and it grows fast. Now, one of the nice things about a hedge is that you can shield off a view, you can lessen traffic noise. The hedge can be kept 2 feet tall or 12 feet tall, just depends upon you. And you can make it so thick that you simply can't see through it. But now let's begin with a planting. Now in planting, I dug a trench about 18 inches wide and a foot deep. And I've set the plants in here in a double staggered row. You can see one here, another here, another here, about a foot apart in each direction. And so here, let me put in a couple of more while we're right here. I want to remind you now that when you handle things like this, you've got to keep those roots moist, or they will die. Even though they're tough plants, they'll die just as quickly as any other kind of plant if the roots are allowed to dry out. Well, you set your plants in a staggered row. Use your feet in gardening. Get that right very firmly around the roots. Now we'll fill in around these plants, as I have done here, right up to the level, and then we'll make a little saucer depression around here to hold water. None of these plants are going to grow unless you add water. Remember also that in this soil, you've got to prepare that soil well. Put in about 1/3 peat moss, put in I like to use a slow release fertilizer so that we get growth over a long period of time. Now, if I'm going to make this hedge thick, let's begin with what we have. Here is a plant with 4 stems on it. Here's one with 4 stems on it. How would you like to have, instead of 4 stems, maybe 16 or 20 stems coming out of this very spot? Well, there's one way to do it. Just get right in here with your clippers and cut your hedge off after you plant it. Now don't say, that, well, I bought a hedge that was 2.5 to 3 feet tall, and that's the way I want it to be. Because what you do, of course, is you end up with a hedge that has all of its leaves up at the top and a bunch of bare stems down beneath. So cut it back like this, and I will guarantee that by September, this hedge, will be right up to the full height that it was before we cut it, except that there will be 4 to 6 times as many stems growing as there are now. Now comes my little trick on making this a dog-proof hedge. Get some poultry wire, just ordinary chick wire like this. It could be, well, this is 2 feet tall. It doesn't have to be that high, but it's 1-inch mesh that practically nothing could get through except a snake. Run it right down between those 2 rows. Just like that. You can stick it in the ground a little bit if you want to, but the point is to get it down between them. We'll take it down here and hook it onto this other post just for demonstration purposes. Down here. All right, just to show you that this is what we do. You get this fence into it. Within a month's time, this hedge will be a foot tall. In 2 months' time, it'll be up almost to the top. By September, will be right up here to the top, and you'll never see that wire again. You might feel that it's not terribly showy for the moment, but that is the long-range way to make a hedge that nothing can get through. Now I'm going to demonstrate the technique of laying sod. I've been wanting to get to this for quite a long time, and truly today is my last opportunity, because next week I'm going to plant tomatoes right in here. So now while we have an open piece of garden, I'm going to demonstrate what you might think would be getting an instant lawn. But it's not quite that way. If you're going to grow good sod, you must prepare the soil just as well as though you were planting grass seed. And that means using that old peat moss. This is something you get from any garden center in the country. Peat moss is the organic matter which will keep that soil open and allow it to hold moisture and nutrients for the life of your lawn. Then we would put on here some lime. I won't want to put any more on here because this soil is now has enough lime in it for vegetables. And we'd put fertilizer, because even the lawn, which comes in a roll as a sod, needs to be fed. Dig it over, roughly 6 inches deep. Mix all of those nutrients, the lime and the peat moss, thoroughly together. This is very, very, very essential. You can't grow a good lawn without having a fine underpinning. Now, whether you're going a lawn from seed or from sod, you have to firm the soil. Now, in this little patch, I can use my feet. You might like to use a roller, but the idea is that if you don't firm the soil, then it will settle normally and you'll have high and low spots. So having firmed it, let me show you how to use an iron rake to make the level surface on it. Now, I am right-handed. Support the rake in my left hand, because by so doing, I'm in control of the rake, and I can make that soil perfectly level. Now, if I don't support it and just drag it, it goes over the high spots and digs into the low spots, and so you have a humpy type of a lawn. Support your rake, and you be in charge of it, and you can make a perfectly smooth surface. Now, I've done that over here, and I'm ready to lay some sod. And I should like to talk to you about what are the advantages of sod. quick results, no question about it. No weeds. This sod is of Merriam bluegrass, grown professionally. It would take 2 years or more of very good culture to produce this kind of a lawn from seed. Isn't that beautiful grass? Not a weed in it. Now that kind of grass, also the thickness of the roots will prevent any washouts, so you won't get erosion. You can do this job any time that you can work the soil. So let's say that one weekend you'd like to do an area about this big, and you can do another bit a little bit later. The cost, by the way, this year is about 15 cents a square foot, which isn't that much different from what it would cost to put in grass seed when you figure everything in it. The sod comes in a strip, in this instance 6 feet long and 1.5 feet wide, rolled up like a green jelly roll. And all we have to do, having prepared the soil, is to simply unroll it. It's like a carpet. You notice I put some boards here and stand on the boards to distribute my weight. Don't, by the way, work over on the soil side, because your heels will dig into the ground and it will no longer be a smooth place for your grass to lie. Right across like that. Notice right in here that the ends of alternating rows are spaced so that the joints don't coincide. That knits it together, you know, as almost as a brick wall is knit. And then to make sure that these surfaces between each strip are good and snug, bring them together as though you're making a little pyramid in there. Bring them up like that so that they actually crowd one another. And you can use something to tamp. I'm just using an old brick. Just tap it down like that and firm it in here. I should point out that the sod itself is only about 1 inch thick. This is the way it should be, because most grass roots are concentrated in the top 4 inches of soil. By taking 1 inch with a good root system, it immediately starts to grow. Within 24 hours, there will be new grass roots growing into the ground beneath it. In a couple of weeks' time, with a little moisture on it, keep it moist, then you'll have a very firm lawn that you can be proud of. And of course, all of these little marks disappear about the first time that you mow it. One last thing that I should say about sod. If you have some sod left over from one weekend to the next, don't, for goodness sakes, store it on a piece of ground like this, because it will grow in. Instead, put it on your driveway, lay a piece of plastic down underneath so that the roots can't go on through. Now let's talk about a tree, a shade tree. And I would like to say in the beginning that I can't possibly tell you in a few minutes everything there is to know about a shade tree. That's a job for your nurseryman, someone in whom you have real confidence. But buying a tree reminds me of that saying that you don't buy a puppy, you buy a dog. Now this tree, you might say, is a puppy, but it's going to be an 80-foot dog before it's through. Therefore, you have to know, where do you want that tree to be? Do you want something that is going to grow 80 feet tall, or would you rather have a tree that has, say, flowers as well as fruit? Something that would be a shield against an unpleasant view, something that would be a background for your house. Do you want pure shade? If you want it for shade, maybe you want it on the south side of your house so that you'll get shade in the summertime. And with this kind of a tree that loses its leaves in the winter, of course, the winter sunshine will come through to warm your house. Let me just talk about two entirely different kinds of trees. The Norway maple being a very common one, fast-growing, dense shade, many leaves to rake, and so dense a shade that it's difficult to grow grass. On the contrast, might be a good tree for you, they're inexpensive. Honey locust also grows fast. It has fine, feathery foliage, The leaves practically disappear when they fall from the tree in the fall. Almost no raking is necessary, and you can grow a very good lawn underneath. But this particular tree is a ginkgo, a Chinese tree which until the 17th century was thought to be have grown only in prehistoric times, because this kind of a leaf was found as a fossil only in rock millions of years old. Found in China in a monastery garden. No forests of the ginkgo have ever been found. This tree has almost no insects or diseases. I don't know of any. It's rather slow growing. It's very pollution resistant, a good tree to grow in almost all parts of the country. Now, in planting a tree such as this is going to be a long-term process. I've dug a hole about 3 feet across. I'll get a spade here and fill this in. We have a hole here about 3 feet across, 1.5 feet deep, so that the soil going around this tree will be so good that the tree will be off to a flying start. And there again, this soil has the peat moss and such into it. You see me use my feet in gardening. That's for a very good reason. You have to get that soil in there firmly. Otherwise, your tree just won't knit to the soil around it and grow. Fill that right in. Then we will eventually come right all the way around and make a saucer-shaped depression around the tree. This is for water. I know a story about a couple of nurserymen. One of them was complaining bitterly because his competition had such good luck. Most of his trees grew, and this other fellow was having difficulty. And he found out what the secret was. Every time a customer bought a tree, he'd come up to him confidentially and say, "Look, I have some pills, and I want you to put one of these pills in a pail of water and water this tree once a week with this pail of water." Well, there's nothing in the pill, but that water did the trick, made the tree grow. Something you might remember if you want the trees to survive. Now, like the peach tree, this ginkgo had most of its roots cut off when it was dug. If I were to let this tree grow, it might survive, it might die back from the tips. But I'm going to compensate by getting rid of some of these low branches because they're in the way for mowing the lawn underneath it anyway. Here's a pair of shears. We'll get rid of those stubs like that. Now, this is still too low to walk underneath, but at least we have the tree raised up high enough so that there's a little more freedom and movement around it. These leaves will build strength into the tree, which will cause it to grow from here on. Eventually, these branches will come off in 2 or 3 years, and finally, the scaffolding branches of the tree will be way up here in the air, 8 or 9 feet above the ground, so they'll never interfere with a person going around it. Now we talk about a tree like this in the wind. Will act just the way a sailboat does, go whipping back and forth and loosen the tree down in the soil. So a tree such as this should be staked. Now I'm going to do this the easy way. Just a couple of plain iron fence posts. I'll drop one of those in on each side of the tree. All right, now we have a support for it, and you know that I'm an old-time Yankee gardener because I never throw anything away. This was an old garden hose which no longer would hold water, but it would make a beautiful support for this tree without chafing the bark. So you run a wire through a piece of old hose like this. We have one side of it supported. Go right around the tree and do the same thing from here. And that tree is not going to go anywhere. The winds can blow, the tree will grow, we'll have no problems with it whatsoever. Well, I think we have time for a few questions, so let's go in the greenhouse. And on the way in, I'm going to stop long enough to pick one of these heads of lettuce. This is that leaf lettuce known as Black-Seeded Simpson. Now, this lettuce has been on the market for over 100 years, still a great one. And here you see how our scallions are coming, even our beans are coming up. Our peas have their first blossoms. Well, let's go in the greenhouse and we'll answer some questions and see a few other things that we've picked today, because the harvest season has begun. Well, we'll just add this Black-Seeded Simpson to the rest of our harvest. Well, let's begin back here at the back of our display. This lettuce is known as ruby. Dark, dark foliage and so tender. Down right in the front are our scallions. Now, these were set out as onion sets a couple of months ago. It's just as sweet and luscious as can be. 3 different kinds of radishes. This one is called Burpee White. We have this one is French Breakfast. This is a sort of an elongated one with a white base. Been around for 100 years and still great. And this round one is Cherry Belle. And right in the middle, we have our first picking of spinach. Long-standing Bloomsdale is that variety. The plants were growing about 6 inches apart. We today picked every other plant, so now we'll have plants 12 inches apart, and they'll grow to be big ones and still very, very sweet and tender. Now let's answer some questions. I have successfully pollinated my amaryllis and now have 3 huge pods of seeds which have opened, revealing hundreds of seeds. How do I plant these in order to get more bulbs? Well, are you prepared to wait 4 years? I don't think so. Don't grow them from seed. Grow them from offsets. They grow right beside the bulb. I received a cyclamen for Christmas. The last bud has just bloomed. What can I do to get it to bloom next year? Well, this is what they look like at this time of year. Repot them, set them outdoors in the shade, and they'll do well for next year. Well, that's all I have time for on this week. On next week's program, I'm going to plant a strawberry barrel. I'm going to show you how to dig and save your tulip bulbs. We're going to plant tomatoes, a flowering vine, sweet potatoes, and peanuts. I'm Jim Crockett in Crockett's Victory Garden. I hope you enjoy the program every week.